What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a rainy Thursday, at least up here in Oakland, California. Welcome to Good to Go. I'm Noah Kravitz from TechnoBuffalo.com.
I'm James Kendrick from ZDNet Mobile News.
James, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say it's not pouring cats and dogs down there in Houston.
Brilliant sunshine, 80 degrees.
I knew there was a reason. You know, I was too happy about not going to Orlando this year for CTIA.
Yeah.
I knew there was a reason, and then the rains rolled in. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's true.
Lots to talk about before even getting to CTIA. You know, AT&T T-Mobile merger.
That's the big news of the week.
Yeah.
They sprung that on everybody on a Sunday, which was all stealth mode and everything. Kind of the biggest news in the telecom business so far this year, and they just kind of threw it out there and just to see what would stick to the wall.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, the timing of things. Good news, people try to. Good news, you know, people push out, you know, based on a number of factors. Bad news, I've always seen pushed out on late on Fridays. So this Sunday, you know, Sunday on the eve of CTIA, maybe that's just when the deal went down. Who knows? But what are your thoughts? You know.
Well, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of T-Mobile customers, and it seems like they're all ticked. I mean, I don't think any T-Mobile customer is happy at the thought of becoming, at some point, an AT&T customer.
Yeah.
Be that as it may, I think ultimately it's probably a good thing for T-Mobile, but that's my take on it.
Now, I would agree if you said it's a good thing for Deutsche Telekom. Because
they came out really nice in the whole deal, I think.
Yeah, they got one report I read had, you know, they were asking Sprint for $25 billion and AT&T offered $39 billion. Whatever the case, they got a nice, you know, if the deal goes through, a nice sum of cash for, you know, kind of the ugly stepchild they were trying to get rid of anyway.
And more importantly, and you don't hear a lot of people talk about this, and I think this is pretty significant. They also, being a German telecom, okay, come away with 8% equity in AT&T.
Yes.
And that's a big deal to me because now, after the merger, if it goes through, AT&T is the biggest U.S. telecom.
Right.
And they're going to have 8% of that, which is no small piece of it.
No, 8% and a board seat. Now, what about, you said it would be good for T-Mobile in the long run. Are you talking about T-Mobile USA?
T-Mobile USA, which is the only, we should point out, that's the only portion of T-Mobile that's affected. I mean, the international or non-U.S. Operations of T-Mobile are not affected by this.
No.
I think it is because I've been watching T-Mobile for a long time, and it's now clear, and we talked about this last week, you know, LTE is becoming the de facto 4G standard going forward. And T-Mobile has absolutely no way forward to LTE. They have no plans. I mean, they have no mechanism to get there. And I think, well, as we see LTE become more of a standard, we were going to see T-Mobile start really I don't know what they were going to do, quite frankly, going forward. I mean, I know current T-Mobile customers don't care right now, but long term, I was really wondering what they were going to do going forward. Now we know they don't really have to do anything.
Doubling HSPA plus capacity could only go so far.
And that's not the way forward for the future.
No, it's not.
And they know that.
You know,
so does AT&T.
Yeah, I'm not currently a T-Mobile customer. I used to be, but you know, you can lump me in squarely in that bucket of people who are ticked. I just see it as a big lose for consumers, no matter how you look at it. Obviously, you know, like you said, there's a win in there. A few parties win here. You know,
AT&T wins big time.
I would actually, this is sort of, you know, out of left field, I would argue that Verizon wins a little bit. I think they'd rather see this than Sprint, become a legitimate player. Now there's basically one competitor for them instead of, a three-way race. And that's certainly a debatable point, but I kind of see it that way, at least initially. We'll see how it plays out. Apple arguably wins a little bit. Google, I actually think, kind of loses. Handset makers, I think, lose. I don't know. I don't mean to be overly bleak about it. The rain maybe has me down a little bit today. But, at the risk of being reductionist, competition is good for consumers. And you pull a competitor out of the pool,
No, I think that's very true. That's always a bad thing.
Yeah. So what is, assuming this goes through, which is a big assumption, and we can touch on that if we have time, one thing I'm curious about is what does Sprint do now?
I don't think Sprint does anything any differently than they were doing anyway. I mean, Sprint is moving to LTE. They've already said that. That's their way forward. Long term, are they going to remain viable as a network? I don't know. Yeah. And this deal doesn't matter in that, in my view. I mean, they're either there or they're not. They have taken, I think, really good actions to be competitive with their true unlimited, with Dan Hesse's current TV ads running now, which I think are very true, where he makes fun of the fact that other networks like AT&T have different definitions for the term unlimited,
right,
which we've talked about before.
Right.
I think Sprint's doing all the right thing, and they are moving to LTE. They've already
they are
stated that's where they were moving.
I think this really hurts them though, in the sense of going from one of the two smaller of the big four in the U.S. to being the only little guy, so to speak, and also now, the gap between them and number two becomes that much bigger. AT&T would become the number one with 130 million subscribers.
Yeah,
and one of the things,
Verizon.
Yeah, and when you get into things which frankly get a little bit out of what I usually cover, but things like lobbying the government, net neutrality things like that, where there has been a little bit of a pattern of T-Mobile and Sprint being on one side of the argument and sometimes joining up to fight against, say, Verizon, things like that, things like negotiating with handset makers, things like, there was a little bit of a sense of Sprint, and I mean Sprint a little bit less so since they enacted the $10 premium data fee, though as you said, the true unlimited is still a very big selling point for them. But Sprint and T-Mobile being kind of the cheaper of the four big carriers in terms of rate plans. And now, can Sprint afford to, I don't know, I think, when I first started covering mobile, I remember, about a year and a half into it, talking to some PR people saying, I don't get it with Sprint. They innovate. They have, at least where I use them, they have pretty solid service. Their data speeds are good. They're at least trying to innovate, even though some of the, I'm thinking way back to like the Upstage music phone, which wasn't a huge success, but they were trying to do innovative things like that. They still are, Evo 4G, and this week the Evo 3D being launched and everything. But they're always just having trouble, really bridging that gap to try to get up into the big boy leagues. And, I think this is really a blow to them in that sense.
See, I see it the opposite. Number one, Sprint as themselves are no smaller than they were before this was announced, or assuming this, let's say this deal was consummated.
Right.
Sprint is no different than they were before the deal. I think they're actually in better position because they are now, or will be after the deal consummates, be the far cheapest of the big three.
Right.
I think that's actually a very competitive thing for them.
That's a fair point. Absolutely.
That's the niche that they've carved out, like you said. And I think that they have, where T-Mobile failed, they have carved out, at least through the Clearwire affiliation with the WiMAX, and to get real 4G speeds, if you will, out on the market first. I mean, they did that
Right.
really quick. They
Right.
they did that. They turned that into at least a competitive advantage, and they are moving to LTE like everybody else. We don't know where that'll wind up or how the Clearwire debt is going to impact them, but the bottom line for me is no differently without this AT&T T-Mobile deal as it would with.
Right.
So
Right.
I think in that respect, it's kind of a
Right.
wash.
Right. Right. Yeah. No. Fair argument for sure. I wonder if this will have any impact on how Google does business with the carriers. They weren't. T-Mobile wasn't the only one to launch a with Google phone for sure, but they've kind of been Google's go-to, at least more than any other carrier, for these with Google devices, or kind of the new, obviously the G1, G2, the Nexus One was, the T-Mobile banded, and T-Mobile worked with them a little bit when, that kind of half-baked attempt to sell the phones directly without a service plan, that kind of thing. And I wonder, I think it was coincidence that this week you saw, Sprint at CTIA with a bunch of Google devices. But just kind of going forward, it'd be interesting. I mean, there's a lot that's interesting to think about with what's going to happen with Android and sort of that split between the premium Android devices and then the ones that the carriers are, perhaps going to more and more look to modify to suit their own needs. Something came out today. The Angry Birds developers posted on their Facebook page that AT&T is going to be putting the Amazon App Store on at least some AT&T phones going forward.
Which we knew they would have to be. And to tell you the truth, don't lose sight of the fact that Android and Google is now the elephant in the room. Okay, AT&T cannot afford to ignore or give short attention to Android. They can't,
right? Because
they've got nowhere else to go. Microsoft is shooting themselves in the foot with Windows Phone 7 every single day. So it's like there's nowhere else for them to turn, and they're going to have to play ball if they want to play ball at all.
Yeah.
They're going to have to play ball with Google.
Yep.
At some point, we are going to see, and I'm actually working on an article about this. We are going to have to see, and I think we will, see Google realize how big an elephant in the room it is now in smartphones and step up to the carriers and get in their face. So, you know what? This is the way this is going to work from now on.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're out of the game because you've got no alternative here.
Yeah. The sort of faux open source stance that they have right now, at least to me, doesn't serve anybody well. It doesn't serve
Google at all.
At all.
I think that's where they're going to have to step up because I think this whole system update thing that has been brought to the forefront again by Microsoft is actually been an ongoing common theme with Android. It's too fragmented. The carriers have too much control. Consumers just flat lose. We don't enter into the equation at all.
Right.
And that is so wrong to me on every business level. It doesn't even make sense.
That's the thing, is it's still, the folks watching out there who are saying, I'm a consumer, I rooted my phone. They still win, but that's a very small percentage of the people actually buying phones.
Yeah, and that is not a good reason.
No.
That is not a good method to have to get existing updates.
The App Store, the Amazon App Store example is interesting for a number of reasons, but one of which, it's become a joke online, the 8 easy steps to installing the App Store, which I haven't actually tried to do, but apparently, it involves just things that the average consumer was never meant to do on an Android phone.
I've done it, and you can actually go online and do it pretty easily.
Right. Now you
and
you
they
could,
email
I
you the
could.
link and you click it. No, they emailed me a link.
Uh-huh.
I clicked the link and it said install it. And that's what I did. Now,
And that
the
was it.
difficulty comes with the AT&T phones because AT&T locks Android phones down to
Yes.
third-party
Yep.
apps.
Yep.
But as you see, they've already had to back off of that. And that
Right.
proves how much stroke Google and Android has, even with AT&T. I'm saying that the tides are turning here.
What was the AT&T? Was it the backflip, the AT&T Android phone that had Yahoo as the default search engine? I forget which one it was.
Yeah, they did that, and then they locked down so you couldn't install anything not in the Android market, which meant the
no side
Amazon
loading.
apps.
Yep.
But I mean, they backed down to that in 2 days.
But the App Store.
Android's big.
The App Store thing is interesting because it just sort of highlights, Google's sort of almost non-committal stance. If you look at their actions, we're open source, but there are these, sort of things you can and can't do, and it's also feeding into, more carrier control the way we're doing it now. It's a business for us, but we're not going to step up and lay down the law so that we can actually realize it as better business. We've got an app market out there, but we're going to, but it's okay for somebody else to create their own app market, even if it, turns out to be one that's better than ours. Just all these different use cases that I don't know. I think they're great. That, not to dwell on the Amazon article, or the Amazon case, I'm working on an article about that. It's great for somebody like Amazon. It's potentially great for, a carrier. I mean, like Sprint, if their Sprint ID thing or something they can do with it, really gets going. It's been great for HTC. They've, really built a solid business customizing sense to run on top and differentiating their devices that way. But it just, it's sort of just neither here nor there for everybody from the average consumer to Google themselves. So I agree with you. I think it will be interesting to see if they do step up a little more and how they, how that's perceived and how they cast it.
I'm working on an article. I'm going to show them how to do it.
There you go.
And,
all right.
And I hope they do, because I want updates, and I want them when they're available, and I want to decide if I apply them or not. I mean, it's just that simple.
Right.
I paid for the phone, and I want control over what I do with it. It's real simple.
Well, you do have control over. We're
way over time here. We got going, and I wasn't watching the timer, and we're way over.
That's right. We could. We're just barely scratching the surface of this stuff.
Well, it's a long topic. Well, once we got on to updates, it was all over.
Yeah. I know real quick, neither you nor I was in Orlando this week. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the most interesting thing I saw from a distance was the Galaxy Tab 8.9 tablet from Samsung, because it's the first honeycomb device with a customized user experience layer. There's a version of TouchWiz. It's basically, from what I could tell, mostly just widgets and some things being replaced, settings and dialog boxes and stuff. But it adds a layer of potential usability to honeycomb I hadn't seen before.
Yeah, it looked pretty good.
Yeah. Anything catch your eye from the coverage you saw?
More tablets. I mean, tablets are the hot thing right now, and we're starting to get them of every size and every shape and every color, and it's a good thing. I mean, competition for us consumers, so we get a lot more choice.
All right. Well, you said we're way over time, and the rain is... Oh, no, it didn't light up. I was looking out the window. I was like, the rain stopped. No, it hasn't stopped, so maybe I'll just go run around the rain for a while.
Anyway, you go.
James, always a pleasure. And for the folks who want to check out your blog, what's the URL?
It is zdnet.com/blog/mobile-news.
There you go. Well worth the read. The nice thing about the blogosphere is you don't have to pick one. Read them all. Get the different perspectives, different opinions.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, till next time when we do it again next Thursday, from Oakland, California, for TechnoBuffalo.com, I'm Noah Kravitz.
I'm James Kendrick for ZDNet.
James, always a pleasure. I'm liking the new look with the haircut.
Yeah, it's much ready for summer.
There you go. Enjoy the NCAA Sweet 16 starts tonight. So
Tonight,
all
I'm
right,
ready.
we'll see you next time.
All right, see ya.